ACCRA's got two more tour level shafts that we have to test. Let's see what they are. Welcome back to the Golf Shop. Jim McCleary here, 6-time top 100 best golf club fitters with Golf Digest. And ACCRA has released updated two new shafts, and they're called the TZ6 and the TZ5. Or if you're the other way around, TZ5, TZ6. Now, the TZ is an offshoot of what was called the Tour Z. The Tour Z was exactly what it was for. It was a tour level shaft, very low torque, very low launching, very low spinning type of shaft. I have one in my Epic driver, okay? They're a very good shaft, high quality made, the whole 9 yards. Well, they decided to take this thing in a different direction by splitting. They like some of the qualities of the specifications for one shaft and then another for another. So that's what we're going to cover, and we're going to do a little testing, blah, blah, blah. So before we get started in describing what the two for, we got to understand the types of technologies that go into golf shafts, all right? And there are several that ACCRA employs in order to make their golf shafts as good as they are. So we're going to cover those. Number one is the S3, all right? S3 stands for Shaft Simulation System Technology, right? What's that mean? It's basically a computer. It's a computerized machine that does all the auditing of a golf shaft. Talks about torque, EI curves, the whole 9 yards. It's totally automated, completely cool. In fact, I think I did a video of it one way or another. We're going to look up in here and see. And it was years ago, and we looked at what it did. Anyway, it is very, very precise. It is very, very it just gets right down into the nitty-gritty of the shaft, and they can use it for quality control. So if they want something that has to be a specific frequency or a specific torque value or specific anything, they can find it with that machine, and there you have it. Now when they also do their testing, they can say, okay, we want our torques, our profiles, our weights, the whole 9 yards to be like in a certain variety, and they can test it to make sure they're getting what they're asking for. So it just basically tightens the package, basically, is what that's all for. All right, so that's the S3. All right, one of my favorites is the Dyematch, right? The Dyematch. Now, Dyematch is short for dynamic match. If you go back in the history of ACCRA shafts, they actually had a Dyematch line. Now it's a function that's applied to a lot of their lines. So they have the I-Series line, the FX line, and the the TZ line. Okay, and what is the Dyematch? Well, and this is the reason why I really like ACCRA quite a bit, because I don't know anybody else who's doing this and yet another piece. So when you go out and you go, wow, I really got this really cool driver shaft. Yeah, way to go. And so what the history would dictate that you've been told by companies, well, just go up a heavier weight, clip off an inch, there you go, you're done. Well, that's a bit of a problem. Why is that? Because the distance from the center of the club head to where the shaft enters is longer than on a fairway wood, than on a hybrid. So that this twisting motion is different on each one, just from a sheer parameters perspective. So what you have to do is you have to have, in order to have that resistance to twisting, or where you find it, so you can have a very, very stable tip section in a driver, you may not need as stable of a tip section because that focus has gotten smaller, okay? So something a little less stable will give you the same kind of results from a dynamic perspective, i.e. Dyematch. All right, and they do that all the way down. Drivers, fairway woods, hybrids, all the way down. And in some cases now, they have driving iron shafts. So there we go. Got a whole family. Let's go with that one. They got a whole family of shafts, which is just outstanding. Because if you find something that works in your driver and you want that same feeling in your fairway or hybrid, whether you use either one or both, you can put their version of that same thing in the club and have that same feel, the same characteristics, the whole 9 yards, all the way down into the driving iron, it would seem, right? So if you like that same feel, that same performance, that same action that you're getting, there you are, right? And it's just an excellent setup. So once you find one, you know that you're going to be set for the rest. That's another one. All right, before we get to my what would be probably one of the coolest things from a club maker, club fitter perspective, we got 3 more we got to go through. All right, we're going to hit these pretty quick. One is the thin wall design. Another one's carbon weave technology. So thin wall design, TTD, carbon weave technology, CWT, and uniform taper technology, UTT. All right, we got we got all that. So thin wall design. Now, the reason why I'm covering these quickly is because this is something in the global how to make shafts could be considered the same in a lot of companies, i.e. thin wall design. So how do we get the wall of the shaft thinner? Other than making the diameter of the graphite smaller, what they tend to do is use less resin. All right, less resin. So the fibers get closer together. You get a much more stable, much more better feeling, much better shaft, right? Instead of just globbing it in there, pulling it out, and doing it. And there's been a lot of time and effort put into that particular setup. Lower use of resin means that you're probably going to get a higher quality shaft. So again, we're staying with the higher quality part of that. Now, carbon weave technology, there are several ways of making what would be sheets of pre-preg, and different weave technologies, even within the strands themselves, so I've been told. And so ACCRA employs a few different types of these weaves / what they'll call technology in order to get the desired profile, feels, torques, all these different perspectives or parameters in order to make that go. Okay, that's the other one. Now the last one, uniform taper technology. So uniform taper means that you don't get any really weird, like bubble shafts or anything. It's just this nice, even taper, and it gives it a good look, transmits a lot of energy, right? In order the way you get down through there. Of course, we see a lot of that. So there we go. So the last one is CFT, Constant Flex Technology. Constant Flex Technology. From a club builder's perspective, even from a fitter's perspective, this thing is outstanding, and I don't know another soul that's doing this one. So we've talked a ton about golf shafts, and golf shafts come in various weights, the most common being 60, right? They can come 50, 40, and we're seeing sub 40 weights, and then it'll go 70, 80, and in a very rare instance, maybe a 90 gram. But so variant weights, right? So if you start with a 60 and you add weight and you add weight, inevitably what happened is that the flex got more stiff. So if you had the profile you wanted and the flex you wanted at 60 and you went up to 70 because you needed something a little heavier, you would typically lose your flex. Now the same can be said if you go the other way. If you go down to a 50 or 40, that the flex would get lighter, okay? And why is that? Well, it's less stuff, right? Less stuff on the club, more stuff on the club. And that was typically what was going on, right? It's not unexpected. So what's CFT bring to the table? CFT constant flex means not exactly, when I first mean constant flex, I thought they were talking about through the whole shaft. No. What it means is, so the shafts that these come in go 50, 60, 70 grams. So if I find a 60 gram shaft and at the right frequency and everything I want, that if I go get a 50 gram or even a 70 gram flex or shaft, that same frequency will still exist. So pick a number, say 250. So if this thing is 250 here for a stiff, it's 250 at 50, 250 at 70. Constant flex, so nothing changes. So you get exactly what you need. You get the flex that you need, the weight that you need, the profile you need, everything that you need. So between Dyematch, the CFT, all the checks that you get from S3, and the other 3 technologies, which, it just depends on the companies, the higher end graphites, the better technologies, you get a better golf shaft. All right. So those are the that's a lot to absorb, I know, but it's important to let you know how good this company is and is for club makers. So when you go to a club makers or club fitters that are independents like me, you'll most likely see something like that. If you go to something in the way of a big box store, you're not going to see that. Now, you're like, well, okay, Jim, that's great, but is it being used on tour? The answer is yes. Yes, it is. It's being used on tour. Lots of people are using the ACCRA line. There's sponsorships and name things that are going on that I can't really get into it. But needless to say is that a lot of folks are using it. So we'll just leave it at that. All right. So the two models, TZ5, TZ6, or for the Canadian friends up there, TZ, right? And so the 5 model. The 5 model is very much like the older Tour Z series, all right? The Tour Z was a very stiff shaft, and it was a very low spinning shaft, and I thought, man, I got no business playing this thing. I don't swing good enough for that, until I lowered all the spin, and all of a sudden I started seeing some distance. So now it's in one of my drivers. Well, what they did here is they made a little improvement on it. So what you now have is they said they made the midsection a little softer, okay? So it feels a little bit better. You're going to hear a lot of words like feel come out in descriptions, and that's important, right? Feel is very, very important when it comes to a golf shaft. So how do they make that? How does that work? Well, the TZ5, although slightly, we'll call it slightly softer in the butt in the midsection, maybe just a hint in the butt section, very firm in the tip section, but it's got a torque, right? And their torque values take them from a 3.2 to a 3.5, which is right down the middle. In most really good shafts that people tend to enjoy and really like the feel of, those are numbers that you normally see. So I'm expecting this to be a very good feeling shaft, and I expect it to perform. Now, the TZ6, right? The TZ6 is a little different. It is considered a mid to high launch shaft in some cases. We'll call it a mid launch shaft. I don't know. I don't see these things getting high, but all right, that's their words, not mine. Now, how do they accomplish that? Well, the butt section and midsection are very, very stout, right? Very, very stout. And the tip section, the butt section, midsection, very, very stout. The tip section is very active. That's another word for very, flexible, all right? Very active, we'll say. Now, what they have also accomplished in this is a very, very low torque, all right? They're into the 2s, right? 2 is very, very low. That's like steel shaft kind of low. So now you have a very low torque shaft, active tip, kind of a mid-launch, spin low shaft, to a other one is a low launching, low spinning shaft with an improved feel. So that's what we're going to do. So I've got a whole series of these guys. All right, I know that's just ugly looking a bunch of stuff, but I've got a whole series of them, and we're going to test 3 of them because I really only want to do 2, but I'm interested in another one. All right, so in the shafts that we're going to test, I'm going to use the TZ6 50 M3. That's a regular flex. What I'm guessing is, because I haven't measured them just yet, is that this is going to play a little stiffer than advertised. It's supposed to have a stiffer butt section, so it's going to play very, very stiff. And we're going to see, we're going to test it. So this is the regular flex. Another one is, and this could be the whole thing on weight category as well, I have a TZ6 70 gram in the stiff flex, kind of the other end of the spectrum. We'll see if we notice a difference. And then in the TZ5, I have a 60 gram M4. So we're just going to hit a handful of shots, collect some data, right, and then go over what we found. So let's go hit some shafts, balls. Let's go hit them both. Swing and a miss. Not too bad. This is where we're going to take a look at some of the data This is the TZ6 M3, which is their R-Flex. And as you can see, I pulled everything into the right. Now, why is that? Could be some weight, could be some flex. But that's the last shot. Hit it about 238, 241, and not too bad overall. Here we go for the next shaft. And a swing, and we did okay. That was a little bit better effort. And we can see all of a sudden now I am down the pipe. Now everything got a little bit tighter. Didn't get quite as far, but got a little bit tighter. Hit a little bit better, just a little bit slower. You can see right here that nothing, a couple of pulls, but for the most part, everything was to the right down the groove, which was an entertaining thing. And we really liked that part of it. So now we just need to go see the next one. And here we go, setting up for the third shot. Bam. Okay, this is using the TZ5 60 M4, again the stiff flex, and look at how tight that pattern is, much higher ball flight, and just have that one that's tugged out to the end. And I kept it there for a particular reason, to show you guys that yes, they can go a little further. Now again, this was the last one, 243, 246, not hit as good as the rest, but the miles per hour was much higher. Now, what we'll find is an overall that the actual spin rate came down for me. So if we take a look at some real numbers here, we go start in the middle, the M3, 242, 248, but massively to the inside. Hit pretty decently at 99.5. I really wasn't getting through it a lot. 33 is a little bit more than I'd like to see, but that's the average that it created. And it didn't fly as high. And it kind of distinctively different, considering on the TZ670 my average was a little bit lower, but the flight was higher. So I was much straighter, hit it about the same, just a little bit more spin rate. Now the 60 M4, however, went a little bit further, went a little bit straighter, and I wasn't swinging as fast, but I hit it the best with the spin rate that was kind of in the middle. Now the thing here is that I hit it much higher, or not much higher, but higher. That gave me the flight time. Now, if we look here, we have the blue, and that was for the first one, the M3, everything to the right. Very consistent on the length that I hit it, just kept pulling it to the inside. And, you know, that's cool as far as consistency goes, but not very good for when you're hitting it. The 70 looks like it is a rocket sled right into the middle. Hit it very well. Very well controlled, just a little short. Now I'm showing you this. This is the M6 versus, or the TZ5 versus the 6 in the yellow, just to show you how clustered the other one was, minus that one that was hit out to the outside. See that guy right there? That's the one. So we're going to take that out, and then we're going to show you what it looks like when that one is gone, to kind of give you an idea how tight the TZ5 went when we take that one right out there. Now we'll get ready to take it out, and I got to hit the button actually to make this thing go. Yep, there's all the 5 shots that are in the middle, and somehow I got to get this thing out of there. There we go. I find it. Boom. Now now look how tight that is, and it's even tighter still than the 70. So we're finding out that this is probably the good weight flex match for me. And just so we can show you the last swing and the last couple of flights, not too bad. And there it goes with the M6 right down the middle. I'm sorry, the TZ5 M4 down the middle. Little baby fade, digging on it. And here goes the M70 down the middle. Not quite hit it very well, a little slower. So let's go check it out for the rest of the time frame. All right, so the testing went okay. I won't say I just killed it. I mean, I'm swinging 100 mile an hour. I should be landing about 250. I ended up about 242, 243. Not bad, just not outstanding. I'd be looking for a little bit more if I was fitting. Now, outside in here, I set this very conservative so that we don't walk away with some bad expectations. So what did we find out? Well, we found out that the TZ5, which is basically the offshoot of my Tour Z, is still the shaft that works for me. Now, does it feel different like they said it did? Yeah, it did. a little smoother, and it's with a club that I normally don't use. So it's kind of impressive in that fashion. I just bolted a driver on and I just went for it, as opposed to my gamers. Now, why did I use my gamers? You got this thing, I just didn't want to tear my clubs apart. That's really all it comes down to. They have universal adapters on them, and I should be able to use them. I just didn't. And the Mizuno head is an excellent head to hit from. It didn't overspin or anything, although I'd like to see about 300 or 400 more RPM off, and if I did, that probably would have given me what I was looking for. Now, I was using the Callaway Chrome Soft XLS's to try and keep all the spin down, because I am a spinner. It's really funny that I'm that spinner, because of my angles of attack are very, very shallow, right? They're not a degree either way, which is not a gross amount, right? So it should be okay. The reason why I spin is because of my club head path. My path is deep, and that's what's causing all that extra spin, and I'm making up for it with my face. So anyway, that's where it's coming from. But back to the shafts. So the TZ6 has a much more stout feeling. I felt like I had to really bring the club in to work. Now, we saw the 50 was a little bit light. Was that a factor of the shaft profile? No. That was the shaft weight and flex. I was closing it down, pulling it through, and doing the same. As can be seen, I made it a little heavier, a little stiffer, same kind of swing paths, and all of a sudden I'm straighter. Now, I gave up 4 yards for it, but I'd give up 4 yards for that any day. So that's just what that is. Now, I get into the TZ5, and which I hit probably the magic spot of weight and flex for me, okay? I like it bending in the middle. I don't need a whole lot of tip movement in order for me to get the ball out there, as we saw. I carried the ball a little higher, carried a little further. Everything worked out pretty good. So, again, that's all about getting fit, right? That's the reason why you go to custom fitters, in order to find the right profile, whether it's these guys or not. Although, I would say that if you're looking to outfit your whole bag, once you find the right shaft for you, the fairways, the hybrids, even some of the driving irons in this particular range, how can you go wrong, right? How can you go wrong? So again, I was just looking to see that, so weight, flex, profiles, the materials all do make a difference in what's going on. Can you tell the difference when you're swinging them? For certain. For certain. The 6 is a little bit stiffer, just like they said, and the 5 feels a little bit better, just like they said. So anyway, you just can't go wrong. So if you're not from in the Ohio area, go to ACCRA.com, and they will have a whole slew of custom fitters that they deal with in order for you to find the right shaft so you can get that taken care of. So if you got any questions, put them in the show notes below. Thank you for staying around for this long, and as always, let's see your scores go low.